Psalm 16, verse 1. Preserve me, O God, for in you I take refuge. David turns to God in the face of some apparent disaster and then goes on to voice his confession of faith, explaining what he believes, how he believes, and what he expects because of his belief. Basically answering the question why he turns to God in the first place in this time of trouble. Verse 1 is where we see him turn to God. Let's take a moment to look at that prayer, because that's really all verse 1 really is a prayer. It says, "Preserve me, O God, for in you I take refuge." What a beautiful prayer, and what a simple prayer. Prayer does not have to be elegant for it to be effective. There seems to be a sense out there that some people are good prayers and there are some who are not. And the quality of the prayer seems to be gauged on the delivery of the speaker and the length of the oration. The truth of the matter is, however, that it is the heart involved in the prayer and not the performance of the prayer that determines God's reaction. And heart cannot be determined by delivery. Check out Jesus' parable in Luke, the 18th chapter, verses 9 through 14, and do exercise number 1 on the devotional notes that you should have access to. That exercise is to simply write a one-sentence prayer, not something pretty or elegant, but something real from the heart, right where you are at the moment. I'd like to encourage you to maybe consider doing this exercise each day. Just write a simple one-sentence prayer trying to reveal an open and raw heart to God. Now let us turn our attention to the second half of the verse. In you I take refuge. This is where I want us to meditate today. What does the word refuge mean? I think there is more to it than just a panic room or a castle like the picture you see here, where you can run and hide when the tragic occurs. It is a place of protection, but it's also a place of rest and calm. It's a place to recover as much as it is a place to be shielded from attack. It is a place to be energized as much as it is a place to decompress. It is a place to be invigorated and revived as much as a place of escape and shelter. Where do you go for refuge? I've recently been constructing a refuge for myself. It's my garden, a place I love to go, relax, get my mind off the cares of the world, drink coffee in the morning before my day starts to prepare to face the day. It's an environment that simply brings life to me. Here's a picture of me refuging. The psalmist is saying that's what God is to him. Not just a stronghold to seek when the enemy assails him, but God is for refreshing, rejuvenating, and bringing life to life. If we don't understand this fuller meaning of refuge and how God is a refuge, it could lead us to treating God like a spare tire, something I've seen people actually do. He's there, tucked away in the trunk, just waiting for the day we have a flat. And then we put him on just long enough to get the normal tire repaired, and then he is slammed back in the trunk till the next flat occurs. That is not what it means to take refuge in God. Here's another thing to consider. Refuges are places we look forward to going, and not places we avoid until we have to go to them. If God is thought of in any way as a spare tire, then the only time we want to turn to him is, well, when the wheels run off. This is not the situation we want life to be in. So if we are turning to God, it must mean something bad has occurred. But if God is truly a refuge, we long to turn to him, be with him all the time, not just when life is bad, difficult, or troublesome, but when it's good too, or just mediocre. It reminds me of what David said in Psalm 27, verse 4. One thing I've asked of the Lord, that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. I guess the question we have to address is, have we approached God more as a spare tire than a refuge? Do you see a desire to be with him all the time? You can't wait to steal away and be with him. Or is the relationship with Jesus something you endeavor to maintain just so it's there on that day you really need him? One last thing to ponder today as we linger on this idea of what a refuge is and how we refuge in God. Refuging is something you have to practice. You can't just run to God in times of distress and expect it to make a dramatic difference. Now, this isn't because God can't or won't do dramatic things, but because we are practiced or aren't practiced in drawing close to him. David was practiced at refuging in God. He spent time communing with God often. So when trying times came, when giants showed up, he was accustomed to turning to God, and this brought him confidence and security. Think about Jesus on that night after the Lord's Supper, as he waited for the betrayer. He did not just show up in the garden and think, man, this is rough. Maybe I should pray. No, Luke 5 verse 16 tells us, but Jesus himself would often slip away to the wilderness and pray. It was a custom for him, something that was habitual for him. He drew near to God, whether it was feeding 5,000, dealing with temptation, or facing the cross. I hope our time here each week becomes one of those moments of refuging with God, something that we can start to practice. As I said last week, I think it is at least plausible that this psalm, or one similar to it, was on the mind of Jesus the night he was praying in the Garden of Gethsemane. I can almost hear him muttering out the words of this simple prayer: preserve me, O God, for in you I take refuge. It is something that has to be practiced. And I hope that this week, as we think about refuging in God, we start to practice that, turning to him, so that it's always available to us in our life. May God bless you.